Welcome back, Red Spotters, on the show in the Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by my very good friend, Mr. David Francisco, once again with another recap for WandaVision, the Marvel Studios show currently streaming on Disney Plus every single Friday. And of course, this is the third installment of our recap series. The last two episodes that we did covered episodes 1, 2, and 3. And today we'll be talking about episode 4, titled We Interrupt This Program. I believe that's what it was called. But yeah.
Great title.
Yeah, absolutely. It pretty much tells you what this is going to be. In keeping with everything. So I think the titles are, so much with all of the other aesthetic of the show, just adding to the fun of all of this. On Red Spotlight number 295. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. We'll give our initial impressions first, and then we're gonna go ahead and I think we'll try and cover the episode as it happened, and we'll get to the big moments, the smaller moments, and everything of that sort. So in episode 4, this is basically the catch-up episode where they really do take their time to, alert the audience of what's kind of really going on here. So it barely features Wanda and Vision, and we get some returning MCU players in an attempt to put the pieces together. That's about as non-spoilery as I can describe to it. Of course, we will get into spoilers, but before we get into that, we're going to start with initial impressions. My initial impressions are that this was far and away my least favorite episode of the 4, which I think might be a controversial take depending on where else you, consume media of this sort. But if you've been listening to my reasons for why I love this show, I think it's pretty kind of obvious to see why I feel the way that I do. But that being said, I do feel the episode was pretty great in terms of what it did, in terms of how it was handled, in terms of the direction and the absolute funness of it. I ate it up. I had a lot of fun. I'm sure a lot of people were going crazy over it. And yeah, overall, pretty solid episode. I think perhaps because it doesn't feature the sitcom format, which I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler, but yeah, this is the first one to not feature the sitcom format. That to me makes it somewhat less rewatchable than the others, but still pretty good. So those are my thoughts. David, how do you feel about episode 4?
I really loved it. Actually, you just mentioned that you don't think it would be rewatchable. It kind of makes sense just because, that episode only gives you answers of weird moments in the show. It doesn't really answer you anything plot wise, and so you can actually just once you've seen this, you can skip over on rewatches. You can just keep going with the comedy because then now okay, this is because of this and that and all that. Although there's one little moment though in the beginning that you do probably have to. Well, whatever. Nah, never mind. Anyway, but yeah, I did love this episode. It was super funny. I liked the answers that we were given and all that. I'm mostly excited for Monica Rambeau.
Yeah.
They really set her up for, I think, something big for the show.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. In fact, I think perhaps that may be what ultimately would really make this episode so important to, not only the plot going forward, but for the, setting up her character. I think it does an amazing job of getting us to get a feel for who she is. But it also sets up an interesting commonality between her and Wanda, which we'll get into momentarily with the spoilers. But no, I think she was great. I think they had a great actress to capture Monica. This is the first time we're really kind of getting to know her. We saw her previously in the Captain Marvel movie. She was the daughter of Maria Rambeau. And yeah. Should we just get into it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So the episode starts, and immediately it is you're being hit in the face with like so many different emotions. I'm sure the rest of the world were really caught off guard. Although in retrospect, perhaps we shouldn't have been, because Marvel does do stuff like this quite often, but we just didn't expect to see the events of the blip in WandaVision at all, because obviously this takes place after that happened, and we've already kind of covered that, so we weren't expecting to see that necessarily happen. So it starts off with a bang. It really kind of like kicks you off your seat because you're just not seeing it coming. And also, it was so well done. Just the drama, you know, the emotion behind it, because we see literally Monica come back, you know, blipping back, if you want to put it that way, where she was in the hospital, and it's revealed through her sequence of, you know, stumbling along the way, as many other people are blipping back, or de-blipping, however you want to say it. It's really confusing, because first it was called the snap, then it was called the blip, but I thought the snap was the snap, and I thought the blip was when they came back, so I'm a little confused as to the terminology.
I think... Did they ever call it the snap? I feel like they called it something else.
They probably never did call it the snap in the movies. I think pop culture called it the snap, and then they probably... So I think that could be an indication that the blip is itself a name for the snap.
I don't like that. I thought they called it like the event or the something. I don't know.
Well,
I didn't think it was gonna be...
In the Marvel Netflix shows, they called the attack of New York the incident.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I thought they just called it Battle New York.
No, they didn't do that.
Wow, that's weird. This seems like an obvious... whatever. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't like that they use it like the snap, the blip. It's like, oh, he got blipped or something. That sounds weird.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it either, but, you know, I guess for me, I'm just a little confused about what it really all means, which is which. But we see the scene in the hospital. People are coming back, and then Monica's looking for, you know, information about what happened to her mom. So we learn that she had just gone out of a procedure. She bumps into the doctor that was operating on her, and then she gives her really tragic news, and that her mom had long since passed away for several years now, and that in the time that Monica had disappeared, Maria's cancer came back and inevitably claimed her life. And that's just that's really sad.
Yeah.
That actually kind of like, that just made me feel just sad. Like, honestly, that really sucks.
No, yeah, just... I mean, I like that detail that she said that, oh, it's like, oh, I think I just dozed off for like 20 minutes. Or just because that was the same thing Peter said in the movie. It's like, oh, I guess I just must have dozed off or something. I don't know. But Doctor Strange says I've been gone for 5 years. It's I think it's just funny that they both had the same mentality of like, oh, did I sleep or something? Or what the heck did I miss? But yeah, it is. Well, and also what I like though about this piece of information is that I immediately got like, oh, she's going to help out Wanda. Like, yes. She's going to tell her like, hey, in an instant or in a snap, whatever, like my life pretty much changed. You know, like, I mean, it's still a weird thing for me though too, just because her and Wanda's situations are still, for me at least, far fucking different.
They are far fucking different. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, either way though, like, I think Monica will be able to connect with Wanda in some way.
Yeah, considering how much they've already interacted and that this was basically Monica's episode, I feel like they really are setting Monica up to help Wanda go through what she's going through, because we have to really remind ourselves, like, in case, because we've said even in the first recap episode that while it was very entertaining and joyous at times, underneath it all, this is very sad. I think this episode kind of took that up a couple notches, from sad to disturbed in several instances, and we'll get to the real disturbed moments toward the end of the episode. But for here, I think you're right, David, because I've also seen others talk about this, where Monica is immediately also someone else that suffered a great loss because of the events that happened, all because of Thanos, pretty much. And so hopefully we'll get to see a moment where perhaps she can connect with Wanda and maybe help her snap out of, again, if she even is in a trance, or if she placed herself in a trance, I mean Wanda, or if she made a deal with somebody else. We'll get into some theories toward the end of the episode about what really is going on here, but there's still, the curtain hasn't been pulled back really that much at all. You know, the episode's being framed as like, oh, now we're getting the answers. I don't know. I don't want to be mean by putting anybody down, but like, I don't think really from a concrete, story standpoint, we really were given anything that we didn't already suspect on some level, for the most part. Perhaps the closing moments of the episode, they did throw some tidbits at us that I think made the story that much more sad. But yeah, but in the case of Monica, that was just a great way to get us into it. And they also took time to really explore more of her career. So they really do establish SWORD here, the sentient weapon observation, blah, 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 whatever it was called. They show us a quick look at the SWORD base, and, she meets the acting director, Hayward, I believe his name is, and they have a conversation that, just catches us up about like, what is this really? And we learn that Maria, Monica's mom, who we first met in Captain Marvel, was the founder of SWORD and the director of SWORD. And I feel like for both you and I, who are fans about the larger canon of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from that discussion topic, it does, I think, pique our interest a little bit, because I think we all just assumed that SWORD, because that's all we kind of knew of it at the end of Far From Home, was Nick Fury's operation. Like, I guess we just assumed that the SWORD people would be out in space, and that would be like Fury's new shield. But based on just like the impressions that I'm getting off of it, and you tell me if you feel anything different, but it seems like SWORD's been around for quite some time, and it has nothing to do with shield.
I don't know. I mean, I always saw it when I first heard about SWORD. I always just saw it as a different faction of shield, basically.
I thought it would be the replacement.
No, I didn't think of it like that. I just thought of it like, because with the names of them, it makes sense what they would be. Shield is protecting Earth. SWORD is making weapons for outside threats, mostly, basically. Like that is how I basically saw it. And so I did like the bit of information that they are in a way, more so just exploring outer space than trying to just be like some weapons place, I guess.
Right.
So, yeah.
It seems like much more of an Earth-based operation because, I mean, are we under the impression that Nick Fury and Talos and the Skrulls, and we should also, again, mention that this is all, I'm sure, stuff that's going to be answered in the Secret Invasion Disney Plus series that both you and I are excited about. Because it seemed like, yes, this is a space exploration program, a sentient weapon observation agency. Do you get the impression that that last outer space base that we saw Fury with a bunch of Skrulls, are we under the impression that also is Sword?
It could be Sword, because remember, S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically gone from this world, so Nick Fury's like free time. And since they brought up the fact that Skrulls would sometimes go to Earth and pretend to be Nick Fury, who knows how many times that's happened. And so when Nick Fury lost S.H.I.E.L.D., he probably just went to Sword, with Maria being his boss, basically, and kind of doing what he's always been doing, which is just mostly protecting the Earth. Maybe gaining. I could see him just basically trying to gain information on certain parts of the universe. So yeah, it still could be Sword. It could just be something that he created on his own. Who knows, really? Although I do believe that it could be Sword, because remember, Maria, she knows about the Skrulls and everything, so she could have. They could have all been working together, basically. Yeah,
I guess to me the bigger picture perhaps is just a little bit less clear than it used to be, because the Secret Invasion TV show, which is going to feature Nick Fury and Talos, has already been announced. However, I am still reading a lot of reports that a separate Agents of S.W.O.R.D. a Disney Plus show is also still being talked about. I just assumed that was Secret Invasion. So is it possible that we're looking at two different shows here? One that features Monica Rambeau as a future director of S.W.O.R.D.
Yeah, they could be it. Because, I mean, again, if they want to make an Agents of S.W.O.R.D.,
you want to say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but then that's how
I'm
you're used to saying
the posters.
You want to say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but then like you're so used to saying it right, like you want to say Agents of S.W.O.R.D., but because you're so used to saying Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it comes out sh instead of s.
Yeah,
the sound.
That's funny.
Agents of S.W.O.R.D. That's a Peter Martinez moment there, if there ever was one.
So I think their Agents of S.W.O.R.D. show would more likely be like S.H.I.E.L.D. in that it's just a crazy adventure in outer space, basically, and they just keep getting into trouble, basically, because Secret Invasion does have to be its own contained story, because it's such a big moment in the comic lore, I guess. And so I don't think just putting it on some adventure show would do it justice, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and I guess this is a little bit of a tangent and has nothing to do with the show, but just to linger a little bit on Maria. Really, like, the snap happened, or the blip. I'm sorry, shit. Sorry. The blip happened, and seemingly the entire universe was united by one tragic event. You'd think that would get the channels of communication to be much more open. And what I'm getting at here is, so Captain Marvel's best friend was dying of cancer, and no one's invented a cure. In the utter cosmos of the universe.
Did
this is a nitpick. It's just one thing, and a little bit of just something I noticed, because like, yeah, I mean, your friend's dying of cancer. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. Okay. I feel like, I don't know, something interesting could be made out of it, but that's just me. And we should also mention, of course, Monica is going to be a big part of Captain Marvel's second movie, correct?
Yeah.
So whenever that happens. But anyway, she's strolling along through the sword facility, and then she's informed that she can't go and do space missions. She has to stay on the ground because of Maria's protocols. And, you know, that actually it was a pretty heartwarming way of, you know, blowing some bad news, and that she always believed that Monica would come back. So that was nice.
No, yeah, that was really sweet.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the more interesting parts of this mystery here, because, you know, they still asking some questions that are not really directly answered. So we see Monica travel all the way to New Jersey, to Westview. It's established immediately that for whatever reason, the people surrounding the area don't remember Westview existing and confuse it for Eastview. There's like this aura of energy that is swaying people to just forget that place exists for whatever reason. The sword agents, including Captain Rambeau and then Jimmy Woo, who are there at the scene, are not affected by it. Just one clever moment about that. I thought it was a little bit like low-key clever in terms of kind of the really bad attitude those cops were giving Jimmy Woo and Monica Rambeau. And I couldn't be the only one to just help but notice that those cops were two like white males, and then you have the higher law enforcement agents be a black woman and an Asian man. Was that the only just person to realize that? Because their interactions with them seemed very cold.
Yeah, I did find it weird that they were just kind of like, yeah, like you said, that they were very cold towards them. Like, I was just kind of like, why are you like this? You know, they're literally just trying to get information off of you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and it's not, and I didn't see FBI guy and Monica to like see them as dumb or anything like that. It was just kind of like, hey, tell her what you told me. It's like, yeah, this place doesn't exist. That town? It's like, yeah. It's like, we've literally never seen this before.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. It was kind of weird, their attitude towards them.
It was weird to the point where it makes me just wonder if that was a subtle intention on the part of the director or the writer for having it framed that way, because it just seemed like too much of a coincidence. And also, if you have the subtitles on, you could barely hear it, but as Captain Rambeau arrives on the scene, then she's had her pleasantries exchanged with Agent Wu, and as they both approach the cops, one of them can be heard, "Here we go." Okay, that was weird. Like, what? Mm-hmm. That sounded a little bit ugly.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that it's a common trope for like cops and FBI and like higher up agents to like just not get along. Yeah. But again, the situation, like, it's literally not normal. So it's like, I don't know. And for me, it would make sense for the cops to kind of like, okay, yes, please get this out of our hands. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I guess it definitely could just be an accident. I wonder perhaps if there was a small intention on the part of the creators to slyly throw in a little bit of subtle commentary there. Because you know how cops' reputation are these days. Yeah, true. I don't know. I just that's something that was just all around weird. You were gonna say?
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you. Oh, actually, yeah. I just remembered. So when we first see Jimmy and he introduces himself to Monica, he does like a sleight of hand trick of like pulling out a card, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's great!" Which, if you saw Ant-Man the Wasp, Ant-Man to pass the time of his house arrest, he learned sleight of hand, just all kinds of card tricks. And I guess Jimmy Woo was just like, I gotta learn that. And he did.
You see, as I mentioned before, or at least I should have mentioned it off the top, that I don't care very much for that movie, to the point where I kind of don't remember that movie all that much. Mm-hmm. So when I first saw that happen, I didn't necessarily like see it as some little payoff to whatever came before. It didn't register. But then as I was seeing other people's reactions, they were saying, they then explained that, oh, no, this was a previous thing that was established with him, or at least with Paul Rudd's Scott Lang learning the sleight of hand trick, and then, Randall Park's Jimmy Woo having learned it now. It actually is pretty funny. And then now when I watch it, it does make me laugh because, like, oh, that's neat. That's funny.
Greatest character development. No, I was kidding.
Yeah. But in that moment, though, there's a couple of other oddities. So, first, he says the reason he's there is because one of his people in the witness protection program was gone. And then he contacted some of the what were supposed associates of this person, only to kind of realize that they had no idea who this person was. So, and notice how we don't pick back up with that yet. Like, he's there looking for someone. He referred to them as a he, and no one's heard of this person. And I don't know, it just feels like it's too important for it to just be a random person that they've already identified, which they would have said something as they identified people in the town. So I wonder, do you think that this person is a character of significance that will be revealed later on? I saw one particular video that theorized that perhaps the mailman that we saw in episode 2 that had a quick exchange with Agnes outside of Wanda's house, that particular male individual had not been identified, as we saw in that board that they were, queuing up all those people. That could be one of that could have been the person, or could it be that Mephisto character that so many people seemingly are convinced is in this show?
Well, it's a weird thing though, because like he knows who he's looking for, Jimmy. He knows who he's looking for. So how did he not point it out when he first sees him in the show? Mm-hmm. So like, I think it's just someone that we just haven't seen yet. And it could mean that he could be of important significance, because I don't know. It is. It would be a big coincidence to just be like, yeah, I was looking for someone, I ended up here or something. But I don't know.
We still have many episodes to go, and that also means we still have many people that we haven't seen before to see, if that made sense.
Yeah.
The other thing is when he says to Captain Rambeau, it doesn't want me to go in.
Yeah, that part.
The energy field doesn't want me to go in. What do you think about that?
I think it was just kind of like since he's already dealt with like Avengers stuff with Ant-Man. I think he just kind of has like this instinct of something else going on here that I don't like. I don't think he like literally went up to the town and it's like pushed him away or anything like that. I think he just has this weird feeling about it. And what I like about it though is that later I'm hoping later on that he and Darcy and Monica just like gain this connection, because they both know someone from the Avengers. It'd just be like a really funny moment. She's like, yeah, when I met Thor, he's like, you know Thor? I know Ant-Man. It's like, yeah, I know Captain Marvel. She's my aunt.
Wow, that I could see that happening. That could be something that could be played for laughs quite easily.
Yeah, that would be great.
Which would be hilarious because Ant-Man is nothing compared next to Thor and Captain Marvel. So that's technically true, yeah. So we were saying about the energy field not wanting me to go in, but then we see Monica walk toward it. She slowly touches it, and then she pulls back. But then, and help me, because it's interesting, right? Like to see how you read it and versus how I read it, because it could look like at that moment she was under some kind of hypnotic trance, that she kept like this dead stare looking at it. But then I believe we also saw the energy field just swallow her in. How did you read that sequence? Did she willingly, was she like under a hypnosis, or did she get swallowed up by the energy field?
I think she got swallowed up by the energy field. She touched, like, I mean, she just gave it a little touch, and she's just like, oh, that feels weird. Because again, like, this isn't like some, it's not like, I mean, the best comparison is Wonder Woman, the first one, where, like, you know, when the soldiers go to the island and, like, one of them, like, puts his hand through the barrier. It's just sort of like,
oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, it almost looks like he's putting his hand through water or something, and he just goes through. At least this time, with this one's willingly. But with her, though, like, she can see, like, this static on the barrier, and, like, when she touches it, it almost seems like electricity running through her.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as her being or, like, going into a trance. It was just her kind of being like, oh, this is different, this is kind of weird, but, like, it's not hurting her, so she just keeps going, and it just sucked her in eventually.
Yeah, that seems likeliest. And then again, we're going in sequence here. We are reintroduced to Darcy, who makes her return for the first time since 2013 in our world, but in their world, I think, as you pointed out, David, 2025, or they're in 2025, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or, well, are they?
I don't remember. I don't know. 2024, 2025. Depending on, like...
Okay, well, that actually is a pretty good question, because, and I don't know if this was assumed. I don't know if we had an exchange about where exactly this falls in the timeline, but I think this is very obviously happening in between Endgame and Far From Home. Right?
Yeah, I think it was confirmed that takes place before Far From Home.
Because Far From Home, if I remember correctly, takes place exactly 1 year after Endgame. So that would make it in 2024?
Yeah, because Infinity War came out in 2019, right?
And I'm confused. Infinity War came out in 2018 and is set in the year 2018.
Oh shit! Really? Fuck.
Yeah, because 2019 was Avengers Endgame, but that took place in the year 2023 after 5 years have passed.
Okay, then 23. Then okay, then so the WandaVision is in 2023. Then
I think WandaVision picks up just a few weeks after, right? Because I think we see in the beginning of this episode that Monica goes back to work 2 weeks after she comes back from the blip.
3 weeks, I think.
Yeah. My brain is kind of hurting keeping all this in check. Okay, so
the MCU, it's weird with the dates. Okay, remember what was it?
Homecoming.
Homecoming, yes. I think they said it was like 8 years later or something, and they're like, wait a minute, that makes absolutely no sense.
No, but I think, like, because we know, based on, like, other reporting, that WandaVision is supposed to set up this multiverse storyline that's going to be picked up with Spider-Man and then concluded with Doctor Strange in their next film. And remember how Far From Home ended with Peter Parker's identity being revealed, and then we saw J. Jonah Jameson.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a good... and I'm not sure if this is obvious to some or if they just inferred this as soon as the multiverse storylines were becoming obvious in the upcoming projects. But I think there may be the finale of WandaVision might concur perhaps or occur at the same time as the ending of Far From Home. Because, I mean, for all we know, the multiverse could have already been unleashed at that point. Maybe. That's just something that one of my crazy crackpot theories. Like, what if, like, we're already in the multiverse and we just didn't know it? Or some shit like that. And they also do say, courtesy to Darcy here, that energy field, for the moment, is in Westview. But they definitely left the door open for that to expand. Yeah. So that could be a far greater risk.
Well, that's a piece of information that I found interesting was that she was reading the energy that was coming out, and she said that it was like the same radiation as that of the Big Bang or some shit like that. I don't know.
The Big Bang, yeah.
Yeah, and so what could happen is, maybe when they break it, it just creates a crack in the universe. So, who knows?
That could be that. I mean, other people have speculated that there may be some connection with the Infinity Stones here, because the Infinity Stones were created because of the Big Bang in this universe. Something out there. They also reveal that the current shape of the perimeter of Westview is a hexagon, which we've been seeing hexagons in the opening credit sequence of the theme songs, as well as, when they closed out, I believe, some of the episodes. So that's another, I believe, potential mystery solved. So we get introduced to Darcy here. We see her for the first time in a long time. And she has progressed in life. She's now Dr. Darcy Lewis. And, I was watching some podcasts talk about this show, obviously, as I usually do, because I love to hear other people's thoughts and, conversations. And believe me, you and I have gone over a litany of really interesting reactions to this. I'm sure we'll mention that toward the end of the broadcast here. But one particular individual, Emma Fyfe, who was on a podcast talking about the show. I followed her for years now. She was in the Collider space, and then she's done some other freelance stuff. But she actually put out some, I feel, interesting commentary on just some of the subtleties that were employed through Darcy that evidently are all too familiar with women in the workplace. And because I do not qualify as an individual under that women in the workplace title, I didn't catch these things, and I'm going to assume you didn't catch these things either. Like when Darcy first stepped off the van and an immediate supervisor came out and addressed her as Miss Lewis instead of Dr. Lewis, which is evidently something that women go through a lot, and they're just immediately dismissed because of their sex or gender. Her being patronized or spoken down to repeatedly, like the guy is kind of like really fussy with her, just like basically almost tells her at one point, just do your shit so we can stop talking, which is pretty, like, I don't know, that was a pretty big attitude. And then some other more comedic moments where she keeps asking for a cup of coffee and no one around her seems to listen to. But then also, like, Darcy is kind of the MVP here because she really is the one to figure out what's going on here. And then the acting director, Mr. Hayward, was like, cool. And then just walks out. And Jimmy is like the only person that says to her, good job. throughout the entire episode when Darcy's kind of like the lifesaver here.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I didn't really notice it like that. But because like, what was the first one? The whole mist thing. I thought it was just kind of like, just a way to kind of give information about the character. It's like, oh, she's not like how much she's progressed. But
I didn't catch that either, dude. I didn't catch that either until it was pointed out. Like, oh, okay, because that's.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be that too. Just people not recognizing her as a doctor.
Yeah.
Who knows? But no, yeah, that is interesting to think about.
No, yeah. And so Darcy, as you mentioned, picks up on the radiation that the vortex, if you will, is reading off. And so she asks for, I'm going to need a TV. Not a flat one, an old one. It's interesting because, like, David, like, we're around a quarter century years old. And, the first television sets that you and I, experienced as children were boxes. There were big boxes. And so when she referred to...
Okay, sorry. It's just
everything okay?
Shit out of me. No, she just like gives me like this scared look. I'm like, what's up? And she goes, I think our neighbor's house is on fire, but she was wrong. Like apparently she could hear the alarm apparently from her room, but I mean I have both of my earphones on. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Just a mistake.
Who cares if it's on fire? We got a place to record. Anyway, I'm kidding.
I know. We're talking about WandaVision. We're making theories.
I know. Like, obviously, we matter more. Yeah. All right. As I was saying, yeah. So when we grew up, televisions were pretty much all boxes. And so it's just another reminder of our age and that, the up-and-coming generation, all they've ever known are these nice flat-screen televisions. And it also is pretty sad. I don't mean to, insult anyone who doesn't know any better. Ignorance is ignorance, right? You and I are ignorant of many things that we don't know of, but we just happen to because, we are fans of film, and so we notice something called aspect ratio. The show, especially in this episode, messes around with changes in aspect ratio. Mm-hmm. And, as we mentioned, I believe in previous episodes, historically speaking, televisions, because they were box-shaped, the aspect ratio, which is basically the size of the image you're seeing in your box, is formatted to what best suits the device. And because they were shaped like boxes, the aspect ratio of those old programs like I Love Lucy or Dick Van Dyke Show are in 4:3 aspect ratio. And that is why, in large part, the first 3 sitcom format episodes of WandaVision were in 4:3 aspect ratio. But it's hilarious because there was this viral TikTok screen grab that was going around of and the only people on TikTok are like teenagers, let's be real about that, or even young children. But they were like saying that they were saying this as if it was a big revelation that, oh, look, that the first 3 episodes were in an old style format instead of the normal Marvel format. And that caused quite a stir amongst, I know Peter seemed to have a pretty dumbfounded expression, just at a complete loss of words. I noticed some people on Twitter who were really depressed by that reaction because the normal Marvel form, what the fuck?
I know. I hated that so much. Like, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, Marvel format. Is that the only movie or TV shows you've ever watched or something? Like, I don't get it. It was weird. It was stupid.
There are people, though, who don't watch much in the terms of film, and that I would assume that if they do, whatever small amount they consume, it would be something of the Disney variety. Disney has all the A-plus brands that people know, all the big franchises, and Marvel was the it franchise for the 2010s decade. And so odds are, if anyone's seen a movie, they would see a Marvel movie. So as sad as that is, and also we have to keep in mind, these are children. These are probably young people who don't know any better. And perhaps that's all they see at that point. And, as someone who used to be a teenager, as both of you have been, there were points in our lives where we didn't have that extensive of a vocabulary of film. So,
I mean, I just find it weird though that they say Marvel format.
I know.
Like, like you're right. Maybe that is what they grew up watching, just a bunch of Marvel movies. But like, there's still Disney movies and just big franchise stuff that they probably could have watched. And like, I just don't understand how an aspect ratio is a Marvel format.
I know it's pretty funny because I mean the 16:9 aspect ratio, which is standard widescreen, which it seems every movie employs nowadays. So yeah, that was pretty humorous to me. But back to the story with Darcy and her figuring out what ultimately happens is that there is a sitcom that's being broadcast through these wavelengths that she picks up. And just the realization of the cast, the whole Sword crew realizing what it is that's going on is pretty hilarious. Just like, is that? It looks like her. And I know it's been a couple of weird years on this planet here, but he's dead, right? Like, not blip dead, but dead. Obviously talking about Wanda and Vision. And obviously these are some of the questions that people had from the beginning of the show. So it did come off as very meta. And I agree with a previous, you and I had a discussion off air, but you had said to me that it almost felt too meta to the point where it wasn't meta with a lot of the stuff that was going on, right? Because they were watching the TV show like we were watching the TV show. They were looking for clues. They were looking for Easter eggs. They were, putting a whole bunch of questions on the board like, is Vision alive? Or what are the hexagons for? But I found it hilarious. So how about you?
No, yeah, it was really funny and it was great. I mean, yeah, like I said before, like how else can they react to this situation? Like, what other things could they say that, I don't know, just yeah, like I said, it didn't even though it was meta, it didn't feel like it because these were obvious fucking questions of what was going on.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't know at times if I was watching an episode of the WandaVision television show or if I was watching a video podcast of a recap episode of WandaVision, because that's often how it felt like, but in the very best way possible. I loved, though, the moments. Those are some of my favorite moments of the episode, for sure, in large part because Darcy and Wu made those moments happen. Realistically so. When she was watching Wanda and Vision kiss, and as they queued up that stereotypical "aw" like sound cue like sitcoms have, she herself went exactly that way. And I just loved how invested she was coming in. Like, she kept saying things like, why are they changing the episodes from the 50s to 60s and the 70s? It can't be for my enjoyment. Or when she sees Wanda, give birth to the twins, Billy and Tommy, and then she gets choked up like, twins, what a twist. And Jimmy Woo looks over to her like, what? I'm invested.
No, yeah. I mean, it makes sense if one of them does get invested in it. I mean, they're watching a show.
Yeah. Remind me, David, for those, this is kind of giving away how the sausage is made, but we had to do a do-over at the beginning of our recording because something fucked up. Did I say already in this recording about what I liked about Jimmy Woo, or was that in the last recording that we abandoned?
I want to say it was in the last recording.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and say it here again, because I think it was the last one too. But all right. But the funny things that this episode did was made me really enjoy the character of Jimmy Woo. And Kyle brought this up. I did a recording with him in Fantasy Fair real quick to just give some brief observations about how we're enjoying the show. And he had mentioned that he actually really, for the first time, actually liked this character because of, he like I do just does not care very much for Ant-Man and the Womp Womp, which is what I call Ant-Man and the Wasp. And the moments where that I think that make me find the character likable is just how often he misconstrues the point of a question he's asked by one of his colleagues. So like when Monica asks toward the beginning of the episode, right, about like what's with you, she's really asking, how do you remember the difference between Westview and Eastview? And then but what he thinks is she's asking about what's your story. And then he starts delving into his life story about like, well, other boys had a poster of Michael Jordan on their wall and something like that. It was, and then of course she reveals, no, that's not what I was asking. And then the same thing happens again with Darcy, where they're watching Wanda give birth, and then what happened? I think Darcy asks Jimmy, do you want any? And to be fair, I thought she was legit asking in that moment, did you want kids? And so he starts going off on like, well, yeah, I imagined a little Jimmy Woo and here and there. And then Darcy looks at him to clarify as she's lifting a bag of chips up in the air to mean, of course, that she asked if he would like some chips. So that humor is nice. It's fun. Mm-hmm. It continuously makes me laugh. So I think overall, Jimmy Woo and Darcy were done justice, I feel, by how they were used in the episode. And I genuinely enjoy their interactions. And I know you probably disagree with me, but I can't help but jumping on this bandwagon. I ship those two. I don't know what it was.
I don't know.
It probably just makes you cringe, right? Like you usually don't really like these ships all that much.
No, I mean I like ships and all that. It's just I don't know. Just
you seem frustrated by it though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just prefer them to be friends and all that. And so
but romance is in the air. I mean, they're watching a sitcom about Wanda and Vision. It's very, they're having kids. Like, it's just a little bit infectious, I'm sure. At least it is to me, as I'm sure it would be to them. But no, those are just some fun moments that Twitter is having, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, we talk about how they were IDing people in the town of Westview. Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of the points of contention that, sparked a lot of social media conversation in terms of like who was ID'd and who wasn't ID'd. I thought they ended up IDing Agnes, which made no sense to me because obviously she's being like prodded up as like a big character from the comics. But then on my second or third viewing, I realized, no, her picture is on the board, but she wasn't ID'd yet. So for those out there that think Agnes is playing a larger role in this, I feel that's even more confirmation that she has her own set of motives or goals here. Well, at the very least, she's going to be a big character going forward, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just... I mean, again, who really knows with her character? Because it's like I said before, it did seem like she was going to play a big part, but then in episode 3, it, for me at least, it kind of felt like, okay, maybe it's not going to be a big part, but she's definitely has something here. She has her own agenda in this situation. But
do you think the agenda that she has? Because I can't. Obviously, we don't know enough, and we haven't seen enough for you to be able to make a clear answer to the question I'm going to ask you. But I'm still going to ask you regardless. Do you feel whatever her agenda is? Do you think it's to help Wanda, or does she have her own, or is it going to be to hurt Wanda? And that also is in connection with another question, which is there another party at play besides Agnes and Wanda? Are there other forces? We know we have S.W.O.R.D. here, but as we've mentioned in the last few episodes, there have been subtleties, some clues of Hydra. I, again, want to state for the record, nobody wanted to be Hydra. Nobody on this podcast wanted to be Hydra. Some people have suspected an organization like AIM, perhaps. Mephisto was a name that keeps consistently being brought up, and there is a theory about that I do want to get into later on in the episode. But do you feel there is another party? We know that there's something else at play that hasn't been revealed, but aside from Agnes and aside from Wanda and S.W.O.R.D., do you feel there is somebody else here that is a major player?
I want to say no, just because I feel like that's way too much to add in this very tiny show. Because from what I've seen on clips for the next episodes, it seems as if we're just going to see a progress of Vision figuring out what's going on and him breaking through reality. And so I don't think we're going to get something big as Mephisto being the bad guy in this situation.
Are you aware of who that is? Because I really am not. I keep hearing from people that he's the devil pretty much of the MCU.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I just know he's like some magical being, like one of Doctor Strange's villains. I think. Right. I could be wrong. But yeah, he's basically, I mean, yeah, I think that's what he is, what you just said, like basically the devil of this universe. But I don't know. I mean, I could see them setting him up possibly for this. Like I think Agnes could still be like the main bad guy, but you know, like after they stop her, they can have like a little scene of her communicating with Mephisto, and then that's how they set up Doctor Strange. I don't think
Agnes is going to be an adversary. I don't think she's going to be an antagonist. I don't know for whatever. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know who is going to be the big bad guy here. It could be S.W.O.R.D. even. Who knows? But I just don't think it's going to be anything that big for this show specifically. Yeah,
I mean, I would be inclined to agree with you in terms of a creative standpoint. Yes, okay. Let me see if I can get my thoughts out as cleanly and as succinct as possible. It is not my impression that Agnes is going to be an adversary. I think whatever she is doing in here is to the benefit of Wanda and the benefit of the citizens of Westview. Wanda, spoilers. I don't know why I just said that, because this whole thing has been spoilers, but hey, I'm just saying it one more time. Monica says it's Wanda, it's all Wanda. Yes and no. I don't know if this is going to be revealed that Wanda legit went crazy, and that because that mixed with her powerful powers created this oddly specific location and very specific set of situations with this, or And this is actually an interesting theory that Peter himself threw out there. Because I'm inclined to agree with you that Mephisto is probably like something too big for what the show is doing, but there could be, at least what Peter said is a scenario that could have happened is Mephisto approached Wanda and basically gave her what she wanted, and that is Vision back in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the deal. And perhaps it could be that Wanda, again, the show keeps going back and forth with how aware Wanda is or something. Like, it certainly seems by the end of the episode that she seems to be fully in control. Yes and no. Again, like so many answers, it's like, yes, she is, but is she really? Like, there's still not that great clarity to it. However, what is clear is that there is some part of Wanda that is aware about a great many things that the rest of us are not. And perhaps a theory is that Mephisto helped Wanda create this reality where Vision could be alive, at least to her and to the people around them, in more than just somebody going crazy, but in a real way through magic of some sort. Because there are moments with Vision toward the end of the episode that really makes us all question some pretty disturbing questions, right? But we'll get to the walking corpse thing in a bit. But more importantly, Vision says to Wanda, we don't have to stay here. We can go anywhere we like. And then she says, no, we can't. This is our home. I'm in control. Or everything's under control. That to me could perhaps confirm Peter's theory in the sense that at the very least, Wanda recognizes she can't leave this place with Vision alive. As in, this is the only void of reality, if you want to call it that, where Vision can be alive. And again, what does alive even mean? Because based on the glimpses where Wanda was not fully in sitcom mode, we see her perspective as she looks back to Vision, which is picking up on the events that happened at the closing of episode 3, as a walking corpse. And I don't know why I didn't expect it, because the camera was definitely like lingering on her, and we're focused on her facial expressions to kind of hopefully give us some little telltale signs about what's going on in her mind. But then the camera cuts to Vision, and the whole world collectively jumps out of their seat, just like, what the fuck was that? That legitimately took me off guard. That was genuinely creepy. And there were some other creepy moments with Vision, but anyway, talk about what I just said about the Vision creep factor here, which is basically kind of a walking corpse, and then some other stuff that I just touched on.
So with the walking corpse thing, I think, like I said last episode, that I do believe Vision is alive. It's just that his body is gone, basically, and so that's kind of like that place is the only place for him to be alive in some way. Some people did theorize that the dead body that you see in that moment, it could just be her like remembering how she last saw him.
See, that's how I originally took that, but then I keep reading other people say that, or it could be that's the legit walking corpse of Vision, and I can't tell you which is which from this moment.
Ooh, yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait to the end for like a for sure answer. The only reason I believe it could be his actual body is because, again, the place is giving off a radiation that is similar to the Big Bang. And like you said earlier, that's the Big Bang is basically what's created the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
So there. Oh, and this goes into a big player giving Wanda what she wants, kind of. Like Mephisto could be using it as a way to collect her power to reform the Mind Stone.
Okay.
Like in some way, and that's why in each episode she slowly loses control.
Right.
Every single time. It could also be
Go ahead.
maybe just her too, collecting her own energy, like trying to like create more and more stuff with her mind, so that at one point she can just like in an instant recreate the Mind Stone again.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that could be his body to give off. Maybe he has like still some residuals of the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I can probably come up with like 50 other theories at this point, but we're just gonna have to wait.
We should say, I mean, look, the show is very effective of giving us moments like these where we're not entirely sure how to read them, because they could very convincingly be one thing or the other. Kind of like last week when I particularly wasn't too sure, still really am not too sure, if subconsciously Monica was doing some really clever cover work under the guise of Geraldine, or if she was under her sway. I think both legitimately can be true, depending on how you see it. But that is a very good question. And in terms of like why I ask about another party being involved, the mysterious moments that we saw in episodes 1, 2, and 3 are not. The audience of Darcy and Jimmy are not purview to that. And Darcy asks the question toward the end of the episode, is somebody censoring the broadcast? So that's a question. Like, is it Wanda?
I was actually just thinking about this, but in the moment, in the third episode where like, Vision's like piecing together like something's weird going on in this town, and like it immediately cuts to him saying something else. Yeah. It did seem like Wanda herself didn't know what happened. Huh. Really? I'm gonna have to rewatch it because I think I'm just remembering differently.
Because we all just assumed that was Wanda just flipping the switch because she didn't like what she was hearing.
Yeah, but that's only because of last episode where she went no, and then everything went in reverse. Yeah. But yes, it could have been her, but it also could be her telling Mephisto or whoever's controlling, being like, I don't want this. It's like, all right, I'll fix it. Because again, I mean, it could be part of the show, but she did look surprised when she reversed time. I'm talking episode 2. When she reversed time and everything was starting to become color. Again, it didn't seem like her. It could be her playing for the episode, but it also could be her being like, the fuck is going on?
Man, I'm loving this show. Isn't it great? I'm loving this. This is actually so much fun talking about it, because these are things there's so much there that we don't really actually begin to realize until like breaking it all down. But yeah, that's why I asked about like somebody else being involved, because Darcy also asks like, hey, what's going on here? Like, who is censoring this? I didn't view it this way in the slightest, but I do want to mention this because others have pointed this out. And the acting director, Hayward, some people are getting some bad guy vibes off him for whatever reason. Do you feel he could be somehow involved in all this? I mean, at the moment, I fail to see how, but I mean, he definitely came off as a jerk sometimes.
Yeah, he did. I'm also just getting Nick Fury vibes. Like, he's just, someone from the distance, trying to keep everything under control. He's a spy. His secret has secrets.
Right.
So yeah, it could just be like a director type of thing where he just can't really show much emotion, I guess, in a way.
Maybe. No, I mean, I didn't particularly find him to be a little bit suspicious, but some people did, so I just wanted to point that out there. But yeah, the wonderful moment where Wanda, we get to see I guess what was cut out of episode 3, which is Wanda basically kick Monica out of the reality, and holy shit was that. I mean, it was hilarious how fucking aggressive it was. Like, holy crap. Talk about getting like a wrecking ball and hitting her with it. I mean, it wasn't exactly a wrecking ball, but like, damn. That was pretty aggressive.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love how witch-like her powers are like, you know, how she gets her hands all stretched out and she starts with the energy beams and of course the effects look so well done here. But as I mentioned before, with Vision, something's going on with him. I think he's beginning to like be a little bit, either he's beginning to suspect things, or maybe he was more aware than he previously let on, because there's certain looks that that he is giving Wanda when she's not looking. Like, there was a really worried look that he gave her, and then he smiled because the sitcom aesthetic was coming back on. What do you think's going on there?
I'm going to have to rewatch those episodes because I know you pointed out that
was creepy. Wasn't it creepy? So someone on Twitter pointed out, and I shared these images with David, that it turns out in episodes 2 and 3, and then also here in 4, there's a moment in those last 3 episodes where Vision looks directly into the camera. So, like, is he aware he's in a TV show?
Oh my god, dude, that's like, it is kind of creepy when you think about it, though. Just like him staring at the camera. I don't really know. Like, again, I gotta rewatch the episodes just to kind of like watch it happen in real time. But why? You scared the shit out of me, dude. I'm not kidding you. Oh,
that
God.
Look, on this. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I on my TV behind me, I put up a display of one of those creepy images, and it honestly, as I looked at it, it kind of got me a little scared too. So let me explain what this image looks like. In episode 4, as Darcy and Jimmy are watching the closing moments of the 3rd episode that we just saw, with an actual end credits with the song coming up, there's this creepy devilish look that Vision is like, he almost is looking to us like he's like he knows he's in some kind of a hell or something into the camera. It is beyond incredibly unsettling to me. Like, I'll take it off now because it is creepy. But yeah, if you haven't seen that image, please go out and see it. But it's only just another example of how things are. You know, we've said, like, the romance, the tender moments, the comedy, also the mystery angles, they're so well done on the show. But I think we're seeing, as the episodes, as we're going through the episodes, the creep factor being amped up just a little bit, but they're very effective. Very effective.
No, yeah. I really like the scene where she kicks out Monica, basically. Just,
yeah.
I like the different, the new information about it, but also just, again, yeah, like you said, it adds more to the creepy factor that Wanda is not right in the head in this situation.
Yeah. So what do you think? All right. So I think I don't know what point there would be in asking you what's going to happen next week. I mean, who the hell knows?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I'm going to ask from a production standpoint. How do you think the show, in the remaining 5 episodes, is going to divide or balance its real estate between the sitcom format and then what's going on in the real world? Because I think last I spoke with Peter, his impression was that we're going to go straight back into sitcom for this next week.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
No, yeah, I think we're going to go... So... It's the 80s next?
I think.
And then 90s...
2000s?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're just going to go straight... Oh, because I mentioned this in our text. I do think we're going to be just comedy, just sitcoms in these next at least maybe 2 or 3 episodes. And what episode 4 did, though, is that now that we got bits of information of like the weird parts, like the guy in the bee suit, turns out it was the guy in the hazmat suit from the outside. We went in, it changed to fit the, I guess, the aesthetic of whatever era was going on at that time. So whatever weird thing happens, we can just piece together easily, like, oh, it's probably something like this, because it really doesn't. Again, like I said before, the answers that we got wasn't really necessary for the plot. It was just weird answers, basically, that we just got. So they can just keep doing that and maybe just add things that will, you know, make a crazy scenario or add more to the creepiness factor of the show, or who knows. And so once we're done with the sitcom stuff, we're just gonna go straight to the plot now. We're not gonna get answers of whatever happens next, basically. So
yeah, I guess that'll be really interesting to see if maybe one of the episodes they go back and forth between the sitcom and the real world. I mean, we've already seen how they change back and forth through the aspect ratios, but I wonder how that would work out. If that's the direction they go into. But
the thing though is that I don't think we are gonna get an episode of a back and forth, because like they said in this episode, time is moving very differently.
Oh yes.
In Wanda's world. So like we got an answer to the helicopter thing, and it was Monica's drone thing that we saw in like before they even found out about the sitcom. And then somehow, like, so she sends a drone, disappears, and then we see the first episode, and like the helicopter's not there, obviously. But then the second episode shows up, and that's when we finally see the helicopter, and they piece together, oh, that's Monica's drone. And that's when they give us the answer that, oh, it probably just morphed to fit the aesthetic of the sitcom world. So that's why I don't think we're gonna see a back and forth. Time is moving very differently, and so we're just gonna get sitcom. Vision's clearly gonna like figure out what the heck is going on. We're probably gonna get an answer finally from Wanda's perspective, and then we're just gonna go straight to the real world by then.
Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting to see how it all turns out. But I think that's about it for the discussion on the episode. That does not mean, however, that our podcast is over, because there's still some other things that I want to get to in terms of obviously the conversation surrounding this episode. Do you have any final thoughts overall? Because I think you and I both really liked this episode, and based on this conversation, we're just loving this show, man. This is great.
No, yeah, I'm really liking the conversations we're having. With any show, really, I'll just love theorizing what's going to happen next. Yeah,
this is great. So now to the not so great. I wonder though how you feel, and we had talked about this, I believe, in just about the last few episodes with WandaVision, about some people perhaps not being overly fond of the sitcom format, especially those who just don't have a fundamental just don't understand what this is, right? Or they've never been exposed to it. But what do you make of people who say like, oh my God, this was the best episode yet, or man, I really needed this episode. Now I'm finally invested. Now I'm finally engaged. I kept hearing a lot of that. Like, man, I really needed this episode. And I'm like, but the first 3 were sensational. What do you, that's how I yeah, you know how I am. How do you feel about that?
I don't know if it's just like a misunderstanding of the sitcom thing going on, but I think it's just mostly people finally getting answers to questions that they had. You know, it's like, I hate bringing this up, but like with The Last Jedi.
Always, man.
People had a lot of theories, and it didn't get answered, like, at all, basically, in that movie. And they hated it.
They got answered, David. They just weren't the answers that they wanted.
Yeah, and then with this show, they had theories, but ultimately, they had no idea what the fuck is going on in the show. So they were happy with whatever answer they got. And like I said, the answers were just small things, small weird things happening in the show, but ultimately had nothing to do with the plot, really. It's just, you know, it was basically just they gave us something weird in the first few episodes and then gave us the answer here just so we can get an understanding of how these worlds are working and how they're going to possibly connect in the end. So, I don't know. And it is just something that people are just not used. So people complain about the sitcom. I don't think it's just something they're not used to. You know, it is something very different than what they're used to in the MCU. So.
Yeah, but on the other hand, though, there are, and this is less on fans and more on, you guessed it, the media reaction. And in this lens, I can be far more critical than, you know, just ordinary people. But in this case, I will be more critical. John Campea, who is somebody who I followed for many years, had this headline that I shared with you. I shared a lot of things with you, but in particular, about how WandaVision is changing the way television is made. I see, that's the kind of overpraised that really soured The Mandalorian for me. And I'm sure for you as well. Because there just seems to be no basis for it. Like, WandaVision is great. And it's doing what it's doing really, really greatly. That's not a word. I don't know what it's greatly, people. The way it's handling it. But is it really revolutionary?
No.
It's changing the way television is made. What the fuck is that? What?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I gotta see the video, I guess, but I don't really understand how he kind of got to that mindset. All this is just MCU needing to like change something up.
Yeah.
In order to get fans interested. This is literally what comics have been doing. Okay, so like this is from a comic, the storyline in WandaVision. And then you have another one where they went, Captain America has always been a Hydra agent. And it's like, you know, they're just trying to get people like to come back to whatever story they want to make. I don't know. It's just
I think I heard him say something to the effect that, at least in the description of that video, that because of shows like WandaVision, perhaps more properties and franchises should consider having cinematic universes extend to also the TV as well as the movies. But still, how that's a revolutionary concept eludes me, because hello, there's been plenty of shows that did that.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps not as directly as what they did with the blip in this situation, but again, like, that's all well and good. That's nice, but it's far and away far, from, I think, what made the episode or the series honestly great. And this is why, and I'm not sure if I perhaps failed to mention this at the beginning of the episode when we were discussing that sequence where Monica blipped back, or de-blipped, whatever you want to say. God, these words are confusing. But part of me was a little, while shocked and excited for what I was watching on screen, I also just felt, oh God, here we fucking go. Because at that point, I already knew what kind of conversations were going to be sparked on the internet. In lieu of, or in the name of, you see, now this is what a tie-in television show is supposed to deliver. And one only has to think so far, especially one that knows me, before they realize what it is I'm referring to. Because it only ever seems to be this one particular thing that is continuously treated like a fucking piñata. And everyone's invited to get a stick and beat the shit out of it. For seemingly no good reason. Because I want to ask this very serious question to you, David. Why on earth was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. of all television shows trending on Twitter when WandaVision had its 4th episode? Why did people all of a sudden start talking about that show when it was WandaVision? That is the show that is airing right now. Explain to me why that happened. Did you pick up on any similarities in terms of how episode 4 did that give you some S.H.I.E.L.D. vibes? Because that seems to be what some fans were taking away from it.
Not really, honestly. And it's kind of hard to like compare it to S.H.I.E.L.D. just because how S.H.I.E.L.D. was in the beginning became something very different towards the end. Yeah. So it didn't feel similar at all to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And the thing that kind of gets me mad, though, is what you said, though. I don't know if it was... I can't remember exactly where it was. But you said, this is how you tie in cinematic universe to the show.
Yeah. Campia said that, I think.
Yeah. The thing, though, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. you gotta understand is that it came out at the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This was just a giant... Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a giant fucking experiment for them that they were too afraid to, like, go hard on it. You know? Like, yeah, you got that bit in the first season where they're picking up the damage from Thor: The Dark World, and, like, that's cool and all. And then it went great with when it tied into Winter Soldier. Like, that is where the show really kicked off for a lot of people. But obviously, like, compared to how WandaVision is doing it, it's very minor. But that's only because they were still experimenting with this idea. But then also you get some people just like not really giving a shit about the show anyway.
I thought the entire reason why people didn't give a shit about it was because it didn't feature any Avengers. And people wanted Avengers in the TV show. That's really what it was. Mm-hmm. They didn't want regular people or no names leading a television show. They wanted Iron Man to show up. They wanted Captain America to show up. Right? At least that's what I thought. They wanted a costumed character, a name character. in order to give him a reason. That's why when Ghost Rider showed up, people all of a sudden gave a shit again. But then when he left, crickets.
Well, that actually adds on to the Netflix shows. Like, they make references to the Battle of New York and all that, but you're getting the costumes of it. You're getting it might not be direct ties to the MCU and all that, or it may not seem like it, but you know, you're getting Daredevil in the suit, and that's what like people got excited about. But the little details to the connection of the MCU were just minor to them, you know. And so for Shield, the tie-ins were big for them, but the costumes were minor.
Because there were no big names leading the show, basically, at that point. And the show morphed into something entirely. When the show started, it was this group of spy agents, and then they ended up morphing into heroes in their own right. It's a very different show by the end of it. You're right when you say that. So that's why I wasn't feeling Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. vibes at the end of it, but I was feeling S.H.I.E.L.D. vibes at the very beginning of it in terms of what it was, at least at the start. And I guess to me, part of me is just a little bit jealous, because every person with an outlet is seemingly recapping WandaVision every single thing week to week. And I'm happy that it's getting a great reaction. But here's where I get a little bit frustrated, is people in particular, those that for years and years and years, and I would know this because I've been watching it for years and years and years, trashing the show, and yet they look at episode 4 in particular as something they love and want more of and call for more of that. But if you want something that's a similar vibe of it, I recall many people, when that was handed over to you, being very critical that they went with that approach. Right? And let me just, instead of being coy here, let me just tell you exactly what I'm referring to, because there was a viral tweet by Stephen Ford, and this is what the tweet said. "Hear me out. An entire Disney Plus show about Jimmy Woo just working on weird cases in the MCU. Like a fun X-Files. Make it happen." He very unironically, literally gave a very accurate description of what the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was. And if I remember correctly, because the first few episodes were like an MCU procedural, kind of like a ripoff of the X-Files, I remember that was one of the very key reasons why people didn't like it. And so here we are, 7 to 8 years later, and the very thing that caused you to hate one thing is now giving you cause to prop up something else. It's just hard for me not to be, I don't know, angered about that. Because just no sense of consistency in it. And they don't even recognize the double standard because, of course, they've forgotten, oh, yeah, that existed. Let me throw out some more examples here, right? This comes from Screen Junkies. Roth Cornett said this. Again, unironically. And again, to her credit, she didn't mean this as an insult. Although, look at what she said here. In the early days of S.H.I.E.L.D., it would feel like they would constantly have Jamie Alexander. That's not true. She was there twice. But anyway, she says it would feel like they would constantly have Jamie Alexander show up, and that it was A, sort of sad for Jamie Alexander, and B, it immediately put you're in television zone, because you can't get anybody else but her. But now, in the case of WandaVision, she says, it just feels like the universe is bigger. What? Wait. You're saying that when one show used D-list movie characters, it was sad and desperate. But when this show uses D-list Marvel characters, it's making the universe bigger.
And not only that, all three characters that you mentioned all came from a television series. So, Kat
Dennings from Two Broke Girls.
Yeah, and then Thor,
Jamie Alexander from Blind Spot.
Yes, and then was he on Fresh Off the Boat?
Yes, Fresh Off the Boat.
Yeah, all
Randall
of them
Park.
have their own TV series, very popular, and like just had like a little small role in movies. So, yeah, it makes no sense how Jamie Alexander is like, from her perspective, it's sad, but for the other two, it's like it's a bigger universe now.
Yeah, it just feels, I don't know, patronizing, maybe too kind for what that honestly kind of insult feels like, especially for people like you and me who followed this series. And it's just, it's very annoying and unfair in every regard. And with that, of course, as I mentioned, that the fact that the show trended, of course, I said that it trended on Twitter, right? Did anybody report that? Maybe one outlet, but no, let's not talk about it, right? Well, look at the kind of headlines that, because certain people were comparing episode 4 with the show got, right? So this is what Screen Rant said. Marvel's Phase 4 already has the perfect Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. replacement. Okay. Comicbook.com. WandaVision proves Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reboot would work on Disney+. Okay. Comic Book Resources said, WandaVision, a sword spinoff, could be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. done right. Am I wrong to characterize these examples as people beating up on this show for seemingly no good reason, and in fact for really outlandish reasons? Like, it would be one thing if they were trashing the show for, just for trashing it, but the reasons that they're using to trash the show make no sense.
Yeah,
they make no sense.
They make no sense at all. And the thing that gets me mad is that they're saying this, like, yeah, let's have like another Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. holding Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Jimmy Woo spinoff. But after a while, like, all these Marvel references to like either comics or the MCU, they're gonna get annoyed. Just like how they did with S.H.I.E.L.D. And so Right, like that was one of the things people kept bitching about in those first 2 episodes, was like, oh my god, every episode they mentioned Captain America or they mentioned Black Widow. Nowadays, that's popular. Nowadays, you can't mention them enough and then not get praised for it. Yeah. So it really doesn't make sense, all these headlines.
It just seems habitually unfair and hypocritical and honestly really grating. Especially for those of us who actually care about this show, right? And it's over. It had its final broadcast last year, and we're talking about it and why? Because it's seemingly being brought up once again to be used as a piñata by the wonderful media here. Because and looking at the framing for these headlines that I read were like, well, the implication was, well, it didn't work all that well, but here's how it could work. Thanks to Jimmy Woo and Darcy. Another thing is people also saying, WandaVision very cleverly and very convincingly leaning into the sitcom format in a way that nobody can touch. But again, like, hey, Shield did something like that last year, and well, hey. By the way, if this last 20 minutes felt unnecessary, I don't care. I don't care. This is my podcast, and I can vent as long as I want. And Kyle, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Yeah. I guess this is what you meant, me bitching, but oh well, this is what happens. However, if you are listening, and if you do happen to enjoy the show, we did have a little recap series for the last season of S.H.I.E.L.D., and you can watch all 7 seasons on Netflix. And as a matter of fact, David, I actually just had a conversation about this with a mutual friend of ours, Sergio. He came over and he dropped some goodies off, courtesy of Miss Moreno. And he mentioned it to me that you were trying to convince him to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So Sergio, if you're listening, hey, I don't know if you are, but it's a little bit of a shout out, but then also to, to get people to watch the show because it is very good. And I am of the mind that if you really did enjoy episode 4 of WandaVision, odds are you might really like that other show we keep talking about. But for whatever reason, it seems to be a popular thing to either forget it doesn't exist or to just immediately laugh at it. And if that's... Yeah, go ahead, David.
I was going to say, like, also that idea of creating TV shows to connect to the MCU, but like directly connected. I don't like the idea. The general audience are not going to watch these shows. They can barely keep up with the movies. It's just going to confuse everyone. Okay. It is as an MCU fan, like, that's great. Give me 100 of those things. Awesome. But like, you gotta think of the general audience, or else at some point you're just gonna lose money on the movies because at some point they're gonna go, I have no idea what the fuck is going on. And that's it.
I mean, most movie studios can barely make cinematic universes work in the movies themselves, let alone expanding the television. But at the same time, though, and I know we're running long on this, but I do want to ask you, one of the negatives, I guess we can say this, and since, this was brought up in some of the other Avengers movies, because there are events that happen that perhaps you might be completely lost on if you hadn't seen some things before. But you know how the episode starts off, episode 4, with the blip? Okay. If you watch the first 3 episodes, I think you can, like, be just fine. But this coming out of nowhere, if you haven't seen, well, the movie that covers this, would you really know what the hell this meant?
No.
Yeah. It's just there, and while I think it will come into as we mentioned, a story aspect with Monica later on in the series, that could be something to give people pause about recommending this to people who are not necessarily that well up on their MCU knowledge. But anyway, that's where we're going to close the episode today. We'll be back next week with another recap of WandaVision and for more salacious hit pieces on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if there happen to be some. I'm sure there will be at least 5 by the time we record next week at the rate that they're coming out. But hey, we're here. Thank you, David, for being here. Thank you for allowing me to vent where others definitely would not. And thank you all, the listeners, obviously, for also putting up with me and my bullshit, while calling you out on yours. There, I said it. Anyway, you can listen to our podcasts every single Sunday, sometimes on Thursdays, as well as the Fantasy Fair with To the Table also coming back in February. Stay under the spotlight for more content, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.